Alright, so we just got done reading Sonic the Hedgehog, the IDW series that just launched, issue 1. Right here I got one of the 5 alternative covers. On retrospect, I preferred the original cover to this one, but I'm not much of a collector of anything really, so what do I care? Um, so before I dig into the actual issue itself, since this is the first one, I'll talk about the Archie comics. I don't know if anyone remembers, but there was a roughly 20-year run of Sonic the Hedgehog comics that sort of became its own little universe and fan community outside of the actual Sonic games, lore, and TV shows and stuff. Um, and I was quite fond of it growing up. I never followed much comics that weren't manga. I was a big manga guy in my childhood, but I followed it for years, and it had a really intense story, and it got really dark. Remember, there's this particularly hilarious, on retrospect, hilarious cover of like Sonic in like a jail cell crying. I think it was like issue 150 or something. But I still have issue I think 200 in my closet somewhere, which is I figured was a collector's item. It might still be. Probably try and dig that up actually now that I think about it, just put it on my shelf. But so the Archie comics got canceled, and I think it never reached a proper resolution, if I recall correctly. And I think in an effort to restart the Sonic um, fandom, because like when they put out this game last year, Sonic Mania as well as Sonic Forces, it seemed like a sincere effort to revitalize an often toxic fandom and sort of you know constantly accidentally hitting mediocre levels of game design and gameplay. I was fond of the Sonic Generations game that came out in I think 2011 or 2012, maybe a little bit later. That was the last one I played. I didn't play Sonic Forces. It looked pretty what they call shipping in fan communities. Uh, and stuff with the character customization. Sonic Mania was a throwback to the original Sonic games, the original Sega Genesis games, and it got quite good reviews. Not really my cup of tea. I grew up on the 3D ones. So there's that. So there's a lot of people on the internet who are pretty pissed at Sega for selling out to IDW to go right for the jugular. I've been reading online a lot of people that seem to think that this IDW publishing house has a social justice warrior streak, and it's destroying the actual credibility of the comics. I don't read comics that much, so what do I know? I also think that it's fucking ridiculous. There's this vlogger I found. I wish I knew his name. I'd love to piss him off and have him come for me. Who's just reaming on IDW and has been like calling their customer service lines and stuff. It's crazy. It's crazy. I'll look up his name and talk about it in the next Sonic comic review. So to get to the actual content, this comic was incredibly quick to read. This took me like about 6 minutes to read. I feel like it's smaller than your average comic book. Maybe it's just because it was very action oriented as opposed to dialogue oriented. So from what I read, this comic sort of picks up after the end of Sonic Forces, where the Resistance and Dr. Eggman have been fighting, and finally Dr. Eggman, disappeared. But his robot army is still terrorizing people. And in this first issue here, they discover that initially the robot attacks were sort of random and uncoordinated, but now they're totally coordinated. So there's got to be someone in charge, and it can't be Eggman in this terrible line of dialogue. I guess this is how they're characterizing Eggman in this IDW Sonic series is. It can't be Eggman. He would make it loud and clear without as much of an angry vlog. So apparently, angry vlogs is something Eggman would do, which I guess is in tune with the character of Eggman that I know from like Sonic Adventure 2 and stuff. But so this comic, basically, Sonic shows up in this town, and there's the little town militia who's doing their best to save their ass from this robot force with their big robot hammers and all that. And Sonic, in his classic teasy way, gets through it, but then puts himself in a little bit too much danger, and everybody's favorite Tails shows up, and they do a little spin dash together, which was kind of cool to see, like immediate unity established like that. It got me kind of hyped. But this is right here. Okay, you got 2 pages with no dialogue. She's just lazy. The art style in this I am not particularly fond of, but I'm not against it either. It's kind of cheap, but the way that they've conveyed action throughout it seems to have good what they call like blocking in the movies, good action blocking. I found the quippiness between Tails and Sonic to be charming as well. They seem to have like a good relationship. it's very like snappy. It's very much the sort of '90s edge being brought back, but not with the grunge in there, like you got in the Archie comics Sonic. There was one particularly terrible line of dialogue in between Sonic and Tails, where he's like, "Oh yeah, thanks for saving me." And he's like, "Yeah, of course. Like I'm always showing up at the right time." And he goes, "No, seriously though, thanks for the save." It's just terrible dialogue. Like I could barely hear him saying that out loud. But yeah, the team up of Sonic and Tails is pretty sick. Very quickly, this episode ends with Sonic saving the day by himself at the end, and Tails deciding he's going to stick around and help the this little town that's been recently attacked recuperate. Um, so basically, this episode ends with you see some kind of one of the like sort of this is a familiar thing from Sonic Adventure 2 as well. One of the Robotnik plane home-in ships firing at both Sonic and Tails, or sorry, Sonic and Amy. That's the reveal at the end. Um, we still don't know who it is, but they're sitting in Robotnik's chair, and they're coming right for him. Make sure word of Sonic's latest success reaches the Resistance. I want to crush both Hedgehogs in one strike. So I guess the Resistance is the bad guys. I don't know. I've only read issue 1, but I got issue 2 here. They're doing one a week for the first 5 issues, I think. So that's kind of cool. And then after that, I'll go back to being monthly. So yeah, that's my review. Thanks for watching. It's not very good. This is not a very good comic, but it's got bright colors. It's got familiar faces, and I as you could probably see from my YouTube channel thus far, I'm a big fan of toxic fandoms, they call it. So thank you for watching.